Oh my God, I am so honored to be sitting here with Victoria. She is my astrologer. And let me tell you a little bit about her because it's so funny how I ran into Victoria on Zoom. Okay. And it started in January 2021. I think it was 2021 or January 2022. I don't remember exactly the year, but it was over a year ago, definitely, when Victor, my ex-partner, actually went to another astrologer and he was like, oh my God, that was the worst astrology reading in my entire life. And I was like, well, you got so we're always doing that, like as a partner. We're like, but you got an astrology reading. Now
Yes.
I want an astrology reading. And I have never gotten my astrology read properly. I've always been so interested in birth charts. Like I think like looking back, I was doing that for myself and my ex-boyfriends when I was young, like going on cafeastrology.com, like let's look
Mhm.
at how we are compatible. Let's look at our moon and our rising signs. So I've always been kind of like very interested in astrology because I do know that it does, some people really do radiate. Like you're such a Libra and you're such an Aquarius, like you can really sense that aura coming from them, And so when Victor got that reading and it didn't work out so well for him, I was like, we got to find a new astrologer. And this time I'm going to also do a reading. And so I went to Allison, who is my very good friend. And I
Mhm.
said to Allison, like, Allison, do you happen to know any astrologer? And I do not want one of those astrologers who would like tell me bad news. Like I don't want bad news without solution. You can break the
Yes.
bad news to me, but I also need like a proper solution about how do I get out of this mess?
Yes,
Like
that's
I'm
right.
definitely an action girl. And she was like, oh my God, Sabina, I don't know why you never met Victoria because she was living in Bangkok for the longest time. But now she's back in Australia and her schedule is so full. It's 3 months booking in advance. Okay. So, babe, I'm definitely a manifester because I'm like, if I want something, like I got to get it. So I
Mhm.
remember emailing you and I'm like, Allison recommended me. Please find me a time. And so somehow, 3 months, not 3 months, actually, you found us a slot within like a month or something. And you're like, well, it's the only time I have available for both of you. And you can get your astrology reading done. And that was my first experience having your astrology reading with you, Victoria. And I remember that day very well because my sister flew down from London to Phuket. And
Mhm.
I was actually at a resort sitting at like,
That's right.
do you remember that? And
I
I was
do.
like,
I do.
having Zoom with you and it was like, background and you were like, oh my God, I miss Thailand.
Yeah.
But you did break very challenging news to me about
Yes.
how that year would be the year that I would really need to step up. And it was more about dealing with men. And I didn't quite understand it then, but I did tell you that like I did feel that I need to speak up about what I want, about my needs. And you did mention that it was going to be a very, very make it or break it year for my marriage, and that I really need to, reconsider
Mm.
how that was going to work out. And towards the year, because I did a reading with you. So now I remember I did a reading with you January 2022. And when you
Yeah.
told me all those things, that was very challenging about how I would need to step up to ask for what I want in terms of business, that I would need to start dealing with men more, business partner wise, and everything. And everything actually did happen, and it was already in line. And how the marriage would be very, very, very challenging because it was like, like a clearing of everything. And you were very graceful to both of us as well when you were breaking that very challenging news to us. I think it was for both of us, but well, I can only speak from my perspective. So it was very much for me.
Mm.
And, towards the end of the year, I had already booked the 2023 reading with you.
Yes.
But I emailed you and I said, Victoria, I cannot handle any
Yes.
more tough
I
news.
remember this so well. I remember this so well.
What did I
You were
tell you?
so, yes, and yes, I remember it so well.
And I said to you, if you're gonna break any tough news to me, like you did this year, like you gotta be very gentle because I am very vulnerable and I don't think I can handle any more tough news. So you gotta deliver it to me super gentle because I just came out of divorce. Like it was really unexpected or expected. I don't know what the divine order is. But then one of the things I really honestly love about you, Victoria, was when in January 22, when you were telling me about the challenges that were arising, you did give me a lot of tips on how to actually handle that, and I think that's one of the things I love about you as an astrologer. And so when I messaged you in 2022, towards the end of the year, I think it was October or November, because we had a reading booked for December. And I said to you, I'm like, oh my God, babe, like I really cannot handle anymore. So if you're gonna, if this year or 23 is gonna be like another worst year, I think I'm gonna jump off the building. It's like that was my moment when I emailed you. I'm like, I really cannot do this, man. Like God cannot test me anymore. So
And do you remember my response was very, very specific, which was, that is not my job to give you bad news. That is not how I view astrology. I don't consider astrology to be the omen of bad news. We can use astrology for workarounds all the time.
Yes. And you were just so gracious in your email, and you told me that, you know what, a little sneak peek is that this is going to be a golden year for you. And I cannot believe, because this is September and it's 2023, and a lot of the beautiful things that you have read for me last year in December have definitely come to fruition. And I really am so honored, babe, to have you on the podcast. And well, since now that we're in the topic,
yes,
like astrology and how like people can be so afraid because they feel like, this might be a be all or end all, if I get my astrology read, like this is going to be the only way 100%. So let's start from the basic. And I really would love for you to share a little bit about, maybe let's start with you sharing a little bit about yourself. And then can you share to us as well about what astrology is?
Yeah. Absolutely. And after we met, I just wanted to add, after you and I met via Zoom, those 2 times, we finally got to meet in person, and I got to see what a wonderful person you are in the flesh. And we really connected, and it was just lovely. That was one of my favorite catch-ups between you and Alison. So yes, so hi everyone, I'm Victoria Davis. And my business is called Who Am I Astrology. I'm pretty sure I don't need to be more specific with the title of my business, very much like Sabina and her journey to love. Who Am I Astrology is very much about discovering who we are, but not just in one dimension or in one dynamic, who we are over time, how we evolve, and who we want to become, at any one point in our time. Because when we look back at our 20s versus our 30s or even our 40s, where I am now, I mean, we are just in different, ages and stages as it is. So my business was very specifically called Who Am I Astrology for that reason, because I remember saying to my husband, he actually came up with the name, I said, I just want people to know who they are, and I want them to use astrology. And so he said, well, what about Who Am I Astrology? So that was over 10 years ago that I started the business, and I've been a consulting astrologer for most of that time. I did take a little break for maternity leave with my daughter, but otherwise I've been pretty much, doing astrology full time since about 2018. The type of astrology I practice is called person-centered or modern astrology. So person-centered really just means that you are the center of your universe, and you are also included in a collective universal situation as well. So it's very much, my astrology readings are very much dedicated to the individual that I'm talking to. As I say in my readings, my job is to sort of keep one eye on the skies and the collective, and really then narrow that down into the individual's life and experience. I do use some traditional techniques, but basically what I study is called Western astrology. So this is actually quite different to Vedic or Indian astrology that some people might know, particularly Indian ties in Thailand will know Vedic astrology. And it is quite different to Chinese zodiac astrology as well. Western astrology is really has its foundation in Greek and Roman mythology. So basically, I do birth charts. That's what I do. I think astrology is really one of the most sophisticated forms of personality profiling, to be honest. I mean, the ancients developed this system, you know, thousands and thousands of years ago, and it has stood the test of time. Of course, we adjust it for, you know, modern life, but certainly the basis or the themes of astrology that were developed, you know, so long ago are still absolutely pertinent and relevant to today. So I do birth chart readings. So we really get in touch with who you are as a person. You know, what is your job or your role here in this life on this earth? And one of my specialties is intergenerational healing. So basically that just means using astrology as an access point for your healing, possibly from an intergenerational background. I also do readings that have 12 months of prediction as well. We sort of use the word prediction, but what we're really looking at is your evolving energy or what you can cope with at any one point in time. Plus, we're also looking at very practical timeline or date stamped happenings and events. And that was really important to you, I felt, with your readings. When is this endpoint going to come? And astrology was able to actually clarify that for you, because in the first reading, you felt that this was never going to end, you know, that this darkness or this blackness or however you were feeling just never had an endpoint. And I was able to luckily be able to tell you. And then, of course, the second reading, as I say to people, the second reading is never the same as the first because you've evolved over 12 months. Things have changed, things have shifted, and you've grown. So certainly, yeah, that's kind of my little background. I mean, my objectives really, I mean, I'm a very practical astrologer. My background is not in woo-woo, so to speak. I mean, I love alternative practices. I absolutely love, you know, everything to do with the alternative. I think it's so complementary, but my background's corporate. So the way that I look at astrology is almost from a very business lens, you know, what's happening in this quarter, what's happening in this quarter, and, you know, what are these date and time stamps? But, you know, my objectives really are to hold space for you, for the client, you know, to make you feel seen and heard, you know. And it was wonderful. I already knew that you needed a gentle approach in your second reading. I could see that already, but it was wonderful for you to be able to express that, and I was able to facilitate for you. My biggest thing is about encouraging the very best version of yourself and your personal potential. And I'm all about empowerment. You know, I don't want to feed you a whole lot of information and then just go, off you go, try and figure all of that out. That's not what I'm about.
That is really not you. Yeah. Like
That's right. I want to give you the information and I want to give you the remedy for it as well, or several different remedies or solutions. So yeah, that's just a little bit of me.
I love that. And actually, you know what? Now that you mention about the intergenerational healing, I do remember that we talked about that in the first reading as well. And I was like, wow, I cannot believe that from my birth time and my birth chart, you were actually able to pick up on my childhood, like what my childhood was like. I mean, I know that as a Reiki teacher, you know, and doing this energy healing work, when we touch our client's body, we can really, really feel what their childhood was like. But I didn't know that it was possible through birth times. And that was something that I was like, oh my God, Victoria, did you just see that from one star in my chart? And you were like, yes. And you're right. I was really in that phase where I thought my darkness would never end. And I remember you giving me reading and I was crying so much because you were like, it has never, and it's never going to come again unless you're 186 years old. I'm like, well, that's good because I won't be. And something ridiculous like that, you know. And I was just like, you're right. Like that's just, you know, not gonna happen again. And I absolutely love. And since you were mentioning about the Vedic and everything, and that it's been used for thousands of years, and maybe you know better than I do, but in Thailand also people are still very much based their time of birthing their baby on astrology. And also it's very, very specific, especially in the Chinese and also Indian culture, like the time where you get married, what
Mhm.
signs is in what. Can you tell us a little bit then about that? Like how our stars
Sure.
can influence us?
So I don't know a lot about Vedic or Chinese astrology. What I do know is that they have a more fated or unavoidable slant with their astrology. And that is what can create fear with people. That there is this idea that somehow everything in your life is karmic or destined or fated. And that is, that's a tough sell as far as I'm concerned. But in terms of Western astrology, we're a little more gentle, I suppose, in our approach, because we work under the principle of what is called free will, right? That everyone has free will. Certainly, to be an astrologer, you have to believe that some things are predestined. And in talking about the intergenerational healing, that is what has come down your genetic line, and very simply from my perspective, that is what is your role or your job to to break that cycle or to help with adjusting that particular line. But in terms of the individual's life, like your life, for example, we all have free will. And I remember saying to you that what is happening to you now is a once in a lifetime opportunity. That's what you were touching on. And so certainly we have these moments where this is it. This is all we get. This moment in time is what you get in this lifetime. So you either use it or lose it, right? You work with it or you don't. And that is your free will. But it's my job to sort of encourage someone that despite it can feel dark or negative or, really heavy or hard, sometimes that is where the work is. That is where the best outcomes of birth, when you're feeling really, pulled in different directions, that's where the outcomes are really sort of birthed. So that was really important. And certainly when I saw your chart, and of course Victor's, that was very significant around this being, very much a once in a lifetime opportunity for you guys to decide, what were you going to reinvent into? That was a big word that we used: reinvention, newness. There was disruption, but also revolution. So I'm talking about the planet Uranus for people who are just interested in astrology. And, for both Sabina and Victor, it fell in the area of relationships. So we discussed at length, all of that. How astrology works, I guess, astrologers are still debating how astrology actually works, because we're sort of stuck between divination and science, I suppose, because we're data crunchers. Astrologers are data crunchers, right? We get a whole bunch of data and then we look to unpick it or unpack that. And we've learned a language in order to do that. But really the general principle is, if astrology had a t-shirt, a t-shirt or a cap, it would be as above, so below. So what we're always thinking, it's wonderful. It's a great expression: as above, so below. So meaning whatever is happening up in the heavens, in the skies, in the universe that we're a part of, has some kind of impact or effect here on Earth. Having said that, though, I just want to reassure people that astrology doesn't cause anything. This is a big misconception with people. They think that, if Saturn gets into position here, it's going to cause this kind of stuff. What is actually happening is that Saturn moving into position coincides, parallels with what is going on. So that's another area of fear for people, that, that the planets are causing all this, disruption and chaos. That's not what's actually happening. What's happening with the planets is that they are coinciding. So they're more symptomatic than anything. But a great example of how this as above, so below works is our our beautiful moon and the gravitational pull of our tides. Everyone knows this as fact, as science. You know, it is real. We can see it. It is tangible. We know that when the moon is in this position, the tides are going to do this. So really what astrologers do is really just butterfly that effect to the rest of our solar system, essentially, all the way from, you know, the sun all the way through to Pluto and all those planets in between. So yeah, that's kind of, you know, it's important to note that astrology doesn't really, I guess, solve or fix anything.
Yes.
You know, it's very, very important that people understand that astrology is not the silver bullet. You know, that if I tell you things, that suddenly life is going to be better, because astrology is a roadmap. I'm creating a roadmap for you, and I'm handing that roadmap over. And then it's entirely up to you to be that active participant in your life. It's entirely up to you whether you use my map to walk the path or you don't. That is your free will.
Yeah, so I love that, because then it kind of brings us into what I really wanted to ask you. Like I said many times, one of the things I love about you is that we have like similar fiery energy. We're like very action girl. We love the spiritual side of things. We love alternative healing, but both of us are also from corporate, you know, and work with corporate clients. And so we want to make this tangible, you know, and like has a proper system. And that's why I think, like, you know, whenever I talk to you, I'm like, I love you, because I know you're so organized. Like if I do an interview with you, like, you know, it's gonna be super organized because you're an organized person.
I'm Virgo rising. So
yeah,
I'm all
that is very like, I don't know, like it's very important to integrate the spiritual side with the science and making it very tangible. So
Agreed.
let's get into the question that I actually emailed you, and I'm like, I really need to ask you this, is that, can we change our destiny, right?
Oh,
And
I love this.
beyond astrology and take action to shift our whatever it is, or the energy that is happening. So can you tell us that?
This was a fantastic question that you sent through. The question you said is, can we move beyond our astrology? How is doing the inner work, how does that open up the possibility of shifting our destiny? You know, and this was so interesting. I know that this has been on your mind, because you were so, so sweet when we talked, you know, a week or two ago, and you said to me, babe, I don't think I want to get an astrology reading this year. And you were so upset. And I was like, that's great. Then my job here is done, you know, very similarly to a therapist or a psychologist, that if your client doesn't come back, then you've done actually a really good job, right? So this is fantastic. And so I don't have a problem with this at all. And knowing you as the person that you are very much about grabbing your life and your destiny and your free will and everything, and really, you know, designing it and navigating it using different tools. So that's fantastic. But the question that you asked, I loved it so much. And I really thought about it a lot, because, you know, can we move beyond our astrology? The answer, I believe, is yes, absolutely. Evolution is happening to us no matter what, right? It's happening. You know, believe in astrology, don't believe in astrology, believe in Reiki, don't believe in it. Either way, we are a part of, you know, a bigger picture. We are a part of, you know, a divine collective. And, you know, our journey and our role here is to evolve consistently. There is some devolution as well, as we know. Sometimes we have to devolve in order to evolve. That happens. Not many people like the devolving though, because it can be a bit painful and murky and bleak. But evolution is happening all the time, even if you're conscious of it or not. Our purpose, I believe, and, you know, after many years of really thinking about this question, and, you know, having a child particularly, is that I really believe that we are here to heal ourselves. It is so important for ourselves, for our previous ancestors, but also for the people that we, you know, are leaving behind here on this earth, be it children or whatever your legacy is. And I've realized that our job is to, you know, heal. It sounds so simple, and it's not, but we do this to close certain doors and open others. we do this journey in order to break cycles, right? This is a big one you would probably find in your work a lot, is the family cycle or the historic cycle or the intergenerational cycle, where some people just find it so incredibly difficult to shift past that or unblock themselves past that. And this is where astrology, I believe, can really help. The key here, though, of course, you know, I can say, yes, we can move past our astrology, but the key, of course, is doing the work. You know, you absolutely, and astrology, you know, is guidance and it's a tool, but it's not going to do the work for you. You know, it's going to, you know, it as you know, it's often our own limiting beliefs. It's often our own blockages. It's often our not listening to our instincts or our intuition. This is what often has clients coming back to me regularly, and that's okay. That's not a problem at all. Some people have deeper, you know, a deeper well than others, if that makes sense. But I think the biggest key here is that astrology can offer you an access point. That's what I love about it so much. And, you know, glancing at the chart for the first time, like I did with yours is right here, just as my organized reference point, is that, you know, glancing at the chart, I can instantly see that there is some, you know, historic or intergenerational trauma, culturally, potentially, that has come down your line. Now, what's been so fascinating about working with you is that you're aware of this. So that has been an incredible conversation that you and I have been able to have. Sometimes, however, though, I'll get clients that really this is the first seed of this concept of what this access point can be. So a really great example is I often have clients that actually come to me and they will say, and this is not rare, this is, you know, quite usual. They will come to me with a reading and they'll say, I've been doing therapy. So just, you know, cognitive psychology or therapy, and I'm not getting anywhere. That's the general gist of it. I'm going round in circles with my therapist and, you know, we're trying to touch on things, but it's not really working. And so they will say, I'm coming to get a reading. And what happens in that reading is that I can absolutely, and I'm going to say almost 99.9% of the time, pinpoint exactly what needs to be discussed in that therapist's office, be it inner child work, be it intergenerational trauma, be it, you know, I've even have clients where their self-worth is so low because there's a family history of not building that up in them. You know, in Australia, we call it tall poppy syndrome, when we cut people down to have humility or modesty. You know, there's so many access points. And I know inner child work was something that I suggested with you for sure. And that was based on your moon in Leo. And so, you know, there's all these wonderful remedies that we can use. And I think that a lot of people are seeking alternatives because what is in the world today, as in, you know, cognitive-based therapy or just psychology, is actually quite limiting. And we're starting to realize that we can use other resources, or we can step outside of certain boxes, using things like Reiki. I mean, regression has been huge for me. That's been and that spoke to me through my astrology. That's been a huge, you know, tool that I've been using in my journey. So yeah, I just think that, yes, you can move through your astrology, but there has to be a willingness to do that. There has to be a little bit of understanding the light that comes with the dark, or the dark that comes with the light, if that makes sense.
It absolutely does. And you know what's really like spoke to me just now was when you actually said, you know, you can get your astrology done, but if you don't do any inner work, you know, it's just gonna go against like the flow. And like you really have created a brand. Now that I think back about my reading, the first time when you were reading my chart and you're like, oh, you're Scorpio rising, Aquarius sun, you know, like all the things you were saying to me, and how actually I'm quite a spontaneous, fun, flirty person because of my Aries and all the fire that is in me. And I'm like, oh my God, I actually haven't played in so long, you know, like I almost forgot that I have so much Aries inside of me that is all about like spontaneity, playing a little game, enjoying life. And I don't know, for some reason, your brand, Who Am I Astrology, now that I heard the story that you mentioned now, it's like it's making sense because through the work, and you're right, like, I do a lot of inner work. I'm very much about a warrior and taking the responsibility from my side. And through understanding my own astrological birth chart, for some reason, this year has really been the year that I really allow my Leo to shine, and I really feel like, oh my God, now I feel at home because I don't need to suppress my light. I can be shiny, I can be a leader, I can be beautiful and sexual and sensual. Like, I can really be who I am. And it's really the first time that I felt that way. And I think I wouldn't have been able to embody so much of myself if I didn't go through the death, last year. I have rebirth. And so I really think that what you're saying right now to people and for everybody who's listening, it's about you having that roadmap to really understand yourself, to really understand and like I said, like you really did pinpoint, like there, you got to work on this. And I'm like, oh my God, I am working on this. Like, how did you know from seeing just one star, And it was so fascinating that that could happen, how you were just able to tell me exactly what happened in my childhood and like, this tools. And I'm like, oh my God, I am using this tool. And you're always like encouraging, need to continue on that. So what I'm trying to say to the listeners, everybody who's listening, is that I think you are years ahead when you really do get an astrology reading done, especially also the personality, like when you really understand your own persona, but not from when you're reading it on your own, because I have read it on my own, but it's so different from getting it from you. Because you really shared so much about me that I didn't know about, or maybe I knew, but I didn't embody. And I feel like somehow knowing who you really are and what challenges are there, like what you need to work on in order to shine as who you are, it's such key. And
that's the empowerment. That's empowerment comes with self-mastery. We throw around the word empowerment and agency and authority and all of that kind of stuff. But all of that really only comes from self-mastery, from understanding that you are the center of your own universe.
Yes.
That what happens to you, or events or circumstances or situations, are so important to your journey, but they're not about the other person or situation or event.
Oh, wow. I get goosebumps when you said that. Like that goosebumps is on my back, and I love what you said, that our purpose here on earth is to break the cycle, to break the, whatever it is that is in our past. And I think like, like that's absolutely what I believe in, is like I am meant to do better, and I am meant to be a better version of myself, like now that I'm almost 40 compared to when I was 4, and also obviously better than how my parents were raising me. So it's like, it's really about evolution, isn't it? Like it's
so
really
much
evolution.
And I feel the same way. I think, really for me, there was a huge evolution when I had my daughter, where I did finally realize that I'm part of a lineage or a legacy here. That it is just so important that I clean up some of this karma, because we all have our stuff there. We all have our access points. And one of my access points had come through my mother's line. And yes, there is quite a lot there that needed to come to the surface, so it could no longer run amok. That's very important, but just needed to be put a circuit breaker in, is the best way I can sort of say it, so that my daughter is able to be free to do what she needs to do, and also work with whatever her storyline is as well. And so, I agree wholeheartedly with that kind of philosophy or life journey, for sure.
Wow, thank you. And I really love every bit that you're sharing. I just want to really encourage. I think you need to have a certain level of courage in
Oh,
order to
yes.
get to know yourself. And I'm just saying this in general, that it doesn't matter whether through astrology or through your own inner work. Like,
Yes.
I think courage needs to be an element, you know? And so,
That's such a big word too. And I love that because it reflects your astrology chart. Because I only see people as astrology charts these days.
you're
Of
just
course,
like,
I
looking
think,
at me,
yes,
Sabina,
every time
a
you say
call, all these stars.
I'm an Aquarius, I'm like, oh yeah, that's right, because I of course see you as a Scorpio. But yeah, courage is very important, because basically what you need to do is face the fear, right? You've got to face the fear of the good, the bad, and the ugly, or the not so pretty, right?
Yeah,
And
yeah.
that's a tough journey for people, for
Yes.
sure.
Yes. And actually, you know what? Now that you mentioned about my Scorpio part, can I just be honest that since I started working with you, I've always felt like I have that, you know, like because Scorpio can tend to also be, you know, very dark sometimes, and it has like, you know, like it's just very tough. Like I don't know how to explain it.
Mhm.
It's a very tough sign,
Yep.
you know.
That deep
Very
waters that
deep.
run
It's like
deep.
the
Yes.
deepest. Like it's like, you know, sometimes I wonder, like, why do I have a Scorpio in my chart, you know, as a rising sign, right? But then like when I really did the inner work, Scorpio is so beautiful, so
Mm-hmm.
sensual, so powerful. And I feel like I've never integrated such a good Scorpio in me as I am right
Mm.
now. Like I
Mm.
really just radiate that, you know, like the
Absolutely.
transform side of the Scorpio. And so what I'm trying to say is that if you compare that to our own personality, it's almost as if astrology is kind of giving you a roadmap of what your weakness are, of what
Mm.
your dark spot is that you need to empower and shine a light on it. And when
Mm.
you kind of shine a light on it, it can be one of the most powerful gifts. And so I
Oh,
feel like at this moment in time, I'm actually so integrated, babe. It's crazy. It's like
so much.
so integrated. It's like, what?
That's right. And at the end of, the truth is, Sabina, when we first had our reading, and I didn't know you, because of course I'm coming in, I'm entering your life, I'm entering into this moment into your life, sort of knowing a bunch of stuff, but not knowing if you know that.
Yeah, yeah, for
Sense, right?
sure.
And so when I saw your Scorpio rising, but I saw Uranus going through your seventh house of relationships, there is a part of me that thought to myself, this could go one of two ways. Either she will step out of that relationship, or she won't. And that's not for me to decide. That's for you to decide. I can give you the options. I can tell you what's happening. I can tell you when it's ending. But I honestly, there was a part of me that wondered if you and Victor may just carry on, because it's a very Scorpio way to do things sometimes, because Scorpio is all about transformation, but it can also be very much about blockage, right? Or just pushing that away, or pushing that down, or just pretending that that's not, happening.
Not happening.
Yeah, that's right. But because you both are so evolved, before even meeting me and doing so much work together, the idea of opening space, because we talked a lot about that too, didn't we? I vaguely recall, that astrology is very much, you've got to open space, because if you don't, nothing new can drop in. It's like a glass
You
of
did
wine,
mention
right? You've got to empty the glass of wine before you can get another
yes.
one. This is very important,
Yeah.
or soda or water or whatever you like to drink. But, the idea of opening up space in your life is a very, very pivotal one, especially for Scorpio types, because otherwise you end up just stagnant. You end up stagnant water,
Yes.
rather than that transformative, free-flowing water.
Yeah. And so the reason I'm sharing that is really to help people know that, how powerful this can be. Like for you to know, like, okay, like this is my weakness and that's my darkness. And that somehow if I apply this inner work based on the astrology reading, I can actually shift and change my destiny, shift and change my personality, shift and change and be really integrated with who I am born to be. And I remember in one of our readings where you said to me that, like, you know, you love doing astrology because it's like everybody's a different soup, right? Like, you know, you never quite have two people who are the same. And I think that's what we need to remember. Like the analogy that I always use in my class is that,
Mhm.
you know, we're all born with seeds. Like I might be an avocado seed, and maybe you're a strawberry, and maybe you're a blueberry. It's like, don't try to be like everybody else, you know, like you got to just allow your own seed to bloom. And we live in such a world now where everything is so industrialized. I feel like the social media, oh, at this certain age, you have to have this at this moment. And even the younger generation now are wanting to retire at 30, you know, like they're
Mhm.
just pressuring themselves to be a
Mhm.
millionaire by 30. And I just don't think, you know, like what if you're, you know, there is an order of divine time and growth and evolution and all of that. So I feel like somehow you mentioned that you love doing astrology because we're all a different soup,
Mm.
different flower butts inside.
Yeah, I love that. And
And
divine timing, I love that expression because that's what astrology really is. I guess it's just divine timing. You know, you can ask a very specific question to me, which would be, Victoria, should I launch my business on this date? Or should I try, you know, to do this at this point? And the answer will be very personal to you, but it will be very specific. It's either kind of going to be a yes or a no, you know.
yeah,
Because
actually, you're
Australians,
right. I did
yeah,
ask a lot of those questions as well.
yeah, and they can be quite specific. And I mean, astrology, I'm never going to say that astrology can predict in full, you know, technicolor detail. That is not what it is at all. But what it is a guiding light. And because astrology is really layered, because what we first want to do, which is what you experienced in your first reading with me is very much about who you are as a person, understanding that. And then when we look at the transits, we call transits when planets start to connect with you personally. Transits are like energy surges, right? They're like this moment where we can or cannot do something, or there's, you know, a caveat or a restriction, or we're going to have frustration, but we're going to have an outcome, you know, that's going to come from that. So expect that there might be some friction or tension or conflict, but at the end of it, I'm seeing, you know, X, Y, Z. And so it's very much this multi-layer that happens, which really starts as you as the foundation, and then it sort of can balloon out from there about what it is that you need to do at any one time, essentially.
Yeah. And you know what? I don't know if the listeners know, but you are also the creator of these beautiful moon cards. I just want to bring it closer
Oh,
to the
thank you.
camera for those of you who are watching this from YouTube. And the funniest thing, babe, we're recording this on the 18th of September,
Uh-huh.
but like recently, was it the 16th that was new moon in
New
Virgo?
moon, yes.
And I opened the box, synchronicity, and it was basically Virgo. So I'm like, oh my God, I'm definitely meant to meet, you know,
I love
Victoria,
that.
because I haven't opened the box in so long. I opened the box, it's like, oh well, it was new moon in Virgo. Do you want to tell us actually?
Yeah.
I love that you really let us see earlier just now that the moon do influence the ocean.
Mm.
So tangible. It's like, you know,
Mhm.
and not only that, but like here in Thailand, we also base a lot of our religious
Yes.
ceremonies around the moon, you know, like full moon, this is what we do, new moon, this is what we do, you know, crescent moon, this is what we do. Like, how do we actually work with the moon and integrate that into our daily life? Can you tell us a little bit about that?
Yep, absolutely. So our moon really is very much just a part of our life, and to the point where we sort of almost ignore her a little bit, I suppose. She travels so beautifully around, you know, she's so protective and she travels so closely around us, and she's just right there, you know. And so we almost take our beautiful moon for granted. So I guess the first thing, you know, listeners need to know is that in astrology, the moon, the planet, represents our emotions. It represents our feelings. It represents our mothering experience or our parenting experience. And it also can represent our body, our physical body, and what the physical body may need at any one time. We now, of course, very much know that emotions and the physical body are totally connected. You know, just stress is a great example of that. If you are stressed, you may have some physiological responses to that. So when I was really thinking about, I was thinking a lot about self-care actually, and using the moon for self-care. And part of it actually came from my daughter. So my daughter, when she was born, was pretty obsessed with the moon. So she would see it in the sky. We were living in Thailand. She was raised in Thailand, my little, Aussie Thai baby. And so we would walk down the soi and she would say, Mama, the moon. And I'm like, what? And she was absolutely right. And I started really thinking about, how are kids in tune with the moon, but we as adults are not so much. And so I started watching my daughter's behavior, and I started watching her responses to things in any one day. My daughter's a pretty stable character. So any unusual behavior was kind of strange. So if she threw a tantrum, for example, was out of character, or if she was, extra clingy, wanted extra cuddles, that was out of character. So I started, as an astrologer, we're, data crunchers and researchers. So I started doing my research, and I just could not believe the correlation. Every time the moon changed zodiac sign, her behavior was different. So the moon in Aries, she was like, I'm an independent woman and I don't want to help and I want to do it all myself. Or if the moon was in Cancer, for example, she would say, oh, Mommy, can I come and sit on your lap? Can I have extra cuddles? And all of a sudden I had all this incredible research, and I thought to myself, wow, there's something in this. So I developed moon child cards for parents to use with their children, just a bit of a cheat sheet. So like, why is this child behaving this way? Pull the card and find out. And then, of course, these things are birthed the way they are. The moon child cards came first. But once I was promoting the moon child cards, of course, I had, everybody say, well, where are the cards for adults? So they were developed really quickly. And effectively, what's happened with adults is that we have been conditioned or trained out of feeling certain ways, right? So anger is a really great example. You could be frustrated and angry and, feeling very fiery. But if you are an adult in a, environment or a situation where you can't express that, you don't express it, right? Kids do. Kids are like, I'll do and say whatever I want at any one time. But adults, we've been sort of trained or conditioned to not listen to our feelings and emotions, and not to respect the nurturing influence of the beautiful moon. So basically, the moon changes zodiac signs every 2.5 days. Okay, that's a 28-day cycle of the moon. And very simply, you just find out what the moon zodiac is in, which you go to my website to find out. As Sabina said, the moon was in Virgo, but currently the moon has moved into Libra. And that's all you need to do. You pull out the Libra card. You have lots of, helpful tips and tricks of what would be good energetically to do. And I've also included some affirmation cards in there as well. So it's essentially us using the moon's energy to reparent or to self-care or to tune into our feelings and emotions.
I love that. Like, that is so beautiful. And I just was gonna ask you what the sign was. So I'm glad to know that it's Libra, so I can look at these cards later. And I think like this is something that you would want to ask any astrologer, but especially you, because you're the only astrologer that I go to. So, like you're the only astrologer I trust. What is the energy and the vibe of 2024, babe? Like, I know that you already probably started to feel it. Can you give us a sneak peek?
Well, it was funny when you asked the question. Every astrologer is kind of very much in the moment. And so I was thinking, oh my goodness, I haven't even thought about 2024. I'm still getting over 2023. And, I will confess that I asked, a couple of mentors, hey, have you guys thought about 2024? And they were like, no. But that's okay. This is great. So, I've got a couple of things here. So the vibe of 2024 will be quite different to this year. So this year really, there was a lot of internal review this year, right? Where we thought we would start, we ended up on a different path, right? That was really important. So, Mars and Venus were in retrograde this year. Mars really redirected people and put people on a completely different path than what they thought at the opening of the year. And then we've just had Venus retrograde in Leo. That has been just happening right at the moment. And what happens with Venus retrograde? This is like a 40 days and 40 nights where Venus is invisible or under the beams of the sun and can't be seen. And so there's this real internal, subtle inner journey around our values, our equality, what gives us pleasure, what gives us harmony. But you guys might have noticed that the last couple of months there's been a lot of drama. And you may have found there was a lot of drama in one area of your life, and that will be the area that Venus, hit for you. And, I don't know if you've noticed, but there's a lot of celebrity breakups as well. So, there's a lot of around, what is our value and what is our identity, but the Venus retrograde has caused a lot of celebrity breakups. We now have Mercury just finishing up its retrograde, and it has been in Virgo. So there's a lot of clarity or analyzing now about what has been potentially a couple of confusing months. For 2024, all the planets are pretty much in place. So this year, 2023, yeah, it's great. 2023, when planets move zodiac signs, you can consider it like moving house, right? So we had several big planets. And when we talk about big planets in astrology, we're talking about Jupiter outwards. So we're talking about Jupiter, Saturn, Uranus, Neptune, and Pluto. These planets, they don't change zodiac signs very often. Sometimes they take years. Pluto, for example, takes, years to change zodiac signs. But when the planet changes zodiac signs, for us humans, it can feel like we've moved house, right? And everyone knows what moving house is. You've moved house, you're in the property, but your stuff is everywhere. There's boxes everywhere. You can't find your toothbrush. You can't find your favorite cup, and it's all a bit of a mess. That's what 2023 has been like. We've moved into the house. We've moved in, but our stuff's kind of been everywhere, and we've been trying to figure out, where to put things. Now, 2024, we're fully settled in the place that we're going to be. The boxes are unpacked, and now we just need to make adjustments. We need to just tweak, the energy that we're working in, because we're now in a familiar environment. It's not unfamiliar, and our stuff is in the place that it should be. So the general theme of 2022 is duets, interestingly enough. That's my take on it. So the theme of duets or working together energetically seems to be coming across very, very strongly, very prominently. And the reason is that we have 4 major planets doing little, dances together. So we have the planet of Neptune and Saturn are now in the zodiac sign, firmly in the zodiac sign of Pisces. And we also have the planet Uranus and Jupiter firmly in the zodiac sign of Taurus. These placements of these planets are pretty much a once in a lifetime for all of us collectively, because these planets take a long time to move. So we've got this duet, this feeling of duets, 2 big planets talking the same language. They're wanting to eat the same food. They're wanting to make the same, things happen, basically, but in a different ways. There's a very strong water-earth dynamic, which is very interesting. Pisces is a water sign, Taurus is an earth sign, and there's this idea of watering our earth, of really soothing Mother Earth, and really soothing us in turn, getting back to nature, being more adaptable and flexible, not being so hemmed in all the time. And there is this paradox between what is real and tangible and grounded, what we can see and touch and feel and taste, but what is not, what is ultimately adapting and shifting and what is flexing, I suppose, in order for us to, evolve collectively. We also have our eclipses this year. So the eclipse dates, just for the listeners, for 2024 are the 24th and 25th of March, the 8th of April, the 17th and the 18th of September, and the 2nd of October. Now, just bear in mind, there's 2 dates because it depends where you are in the world, what date the eclipse will fall. So you'll need to check that for where you live. But basically, these eclipses talk very strongly of a 19-year cycle for all of us. So listeners can start to think back to anything significant in 2005, right? Have a really good think. What was the energy of 2005? What did you gain or what did you lose? What were you invited to embrace and what were you encouraged to let go of? 2005 was very significant for all of us. Of course, where this lands in the chart is going to be completely independent of everyone, but collectively we can look at these eclipses. They're in the relationship axis of Aries and Libra. So again, you know, this idea of duets, are we independent or are we connected? Are we, you know, people that like to be in a relationship, or are we people that are independent? Or can we be people that can hold both? So these will all be questions that are raised in 2024. Overall, we have a lot around humans, I guess that sounds funny, but collective, humanitarian and humanistic energy. You know, where things have been sort of every man for himself, we're starting to move into a much more collective vibe where we understand that we're part of a bigger picture, and this will absolutely continue to evolve things like race, gender, equality, all of those type of things. We'll start to see AI really take a big increase as well. So there are a couple of things, and also we'll still continue to see the environment be very prominent in our news, climate change, how we can start to renew, reuse, and, you know, recycle rather than, you know, constantly feeding the capitalist, you know, machine. So it's going to be a really interesting year, 2024. And yeah, if you're interested in an astrology reading, you can certainly get in touch with me.
Yeah. Oh my God. I feel like I got a really good sneak peek. And I actually, you know, it's funny. I have been sensing then 2024 energy early because I feel like things are more settled and integrated. And I was just thinking about that only started to feel that way like recently. And
Yes.
it's so funny because the other day I had a dream about something and I was like, what happened to my life in 2005? How crazy, babe.
Interesting.
Oh my
Interesting. Yes.
God. I was like, I was listening to a 2005 hip hop playlist as well. So it's kind of because I was like, that's a
I
hip
love that.
era. So I was like
And
remembering my childhood, you know, but now I really need to go back and think through with the points
yeah.
that you have given. So I'm definitely going to do that. But for
And
the listeners, I just want to say this because I think it's really important for everybody to hear is that Victoria's booking list is very long. But I know that you have some openings for October, and you have been so kind to offer to my listeners, to everyone who's listening, my friends, my clients, anybody who's listening, who wants to book in a session for October, and you're going to give us extra time. Is that correct? Do you want to tell us a little bit about that?
absolutely. So I do generally have a wait list, but I have some slots available in October. And basically what I'm offering your listeners is that you can have a 90-minute astrology reading with me, an initial consultation of 90 minutes for the price of 60. So
Yeah.
that's just for October only. And basically that's around 5,100 baht, 225 Australian dollars, or about 145 USD. So remember, this is just for bookings in October, and you can absolutely go to my website and you can, you know, purchase a reading with me. Make sure that you purchase a reading with me, and I will, yeah, I'll book you in.
Yeah. And like, I just want to say, like, this whole idea of me reviving the podcast again was also to talk to people who kind of is like a prominent, you know, person during my journey of death and rebirth and transformation. And Victoria, you have been that person so much. And I just want to say, like, the last reading that I got from you, which was in December for 2023, has been so spot on. And you empowered me so much to step into my Leo, to step into my power, to not hide my light. You empowered me so much to like go enjoy life, have fun, travel, do all of that. And without even thinking about it, you know, it just kind of like comes naturally. I rekindled so many friendships from the past that has now become like, you know, one of my closest friends. And I remember when I met you, I was also telling you that I was going on a date and it was the first date after 10 years. And I was like, you know, I'm just like gonna go and dip my toes in the water. And you were just like, babe, like honestly, like there's gonna be many, you know,
Yes.
you were just like, by the way, what you're thinking right now is just one, but there's gonna be many. And I was just like, no, there's not. No, there's not, you know, because I was still like wrapped up in my whole head. But you are one of the most encouraging women. You are all about empowerment. And I think like as like when we think about astrology, often we get so scared because it's like it's gonna be a whole lot of bad news with some good news, you know. We're like, I don't want to dip my toe in this hot water. But to be very, very honest, I think having an astrology reading, especially to know who you are, you really are years ahead because then you really know where to pinpoint to empower yourself to come out of that rut, to embody the seed that you're born to be, to unleash your full potential. And I cannot believe you know, it's been almost 2 years that I've done a reading with you. And I am at such an integrated place. And I know that astrologically, all of my signs, whether it's Scorpio, Leo, Aquarius, you know, Aries, all of them are really like very much in alignment. And it's because you gave me a roadmap and I did the inner work. So it's like a perfect combination of the two. And I just really want people to experience that. I feel like you're going to save so much time as well. You know, it's like, well, then you know, you're saving so much time and
That's
energy.
right. And clients can come to me and I can tell them, you know, what they need to work on. And then they can go to you and say, Victoria said, I need to, this is my intention.
You know what, babe? You just gave me a business idea. So I think we're going to have to talk through after this podcast.
I think
gave
so.
me an idea, but like, yes, like.
But that is so kind, Sabina. And I mean, right back at you, my love. Women helping women is a huge part of both your and my Leo sort of energy. I suppose it's not even women helping women. We want to encourage people's personal potential no matter what. And it's just been such a joy to get to know you both personally and through your astrology. And I just, we've got a mutual appreciation club going on here.
And with this to everybody, it's like book the session, book the reading, because you're saving years of your time. And also you will really know, like, okay, is this really the right time to launch something? I mean, some of you might be wanting to launch a project. Some of you might be wanting to launch a baby, why is it not working? And which, by the way, you did tell me that if I was married this year, I would have had kids by now. And I did somehow, with my one ovary, I froze my eggs, so it's like that is a form of me somehow birthing, something and keeping it in storage for later. But it was just like a lot of things to really help me know whether it's the right time for me to dip in and focus on that project, and when like the project just came, it's like I didn't expect it. It was right before I left to Europe. It happened in 1 month, and like it just saves so much of your time. And so I really want to encourage everybody. Victoria is free this October. Find time. It's 90 minutes of your time. It's only 5,000 baht. It's going to be really worth it for you. And she's been so kind to offer that to us. And so I really hope that you will get to experience what I experienced. And long story short, babes, like, don't be afraid. That's it. Don't be afraid, because even if you use astrology or not, the journey to discover yourself will require courage. And I think doing any form of inner work requires courage. And so be courageous, choose courage over fear. And I think that this astrology reading will really, really empower you. So that's all. I think that's all I want to end.
So I just want to add one last thing.
Go ahead.
We need your birth time. So anyone that may not know their birth time, you'll need to find that out. And rather than booking on my website, you actually will need to email me directly so that we
Yes,
can prove it.
yes.
Yes,
So
that's just
actually, you
really,
know what? I'm just gonna paste your website link and then
yeah,
everybody can
great.
redirect. And you're also very active on Instagram, so I'm gonna put that in as well. And thank you so much,
Oh,
Victoria. Oh my goodness, what an hour that we had. And I hope that this has been beneficial to everyone as well. It's always a pleasure meeting you, babe.
oh, thank you so much, Sabina. It's been my absolute honor, and thank you for having me on the podcast.
Thank you. See you later.